Under a sky that looked like it was bleeding, the city of Lyra trembled. The empire of wolves and men, once glorious, once proud, now echoed with the clatter of chains and the hiss of torches. Every corner burned with the scent of fear and iron, and every heartbeat that pulsed through the crowd seemed to belong to someone waiting to see her fall. Lyra ran. Barefoot. Broken. Breath catching against the smoke and the wind. The marble beneath her feet was slick with rain and blood, both hers and someone else's, she couldn't tell anymore. Her gown, white once, holy once, was now nothing but a strip of fabric clinging to her trembling frame. The hem tore with every step. Her hair stuck to her neck, her shoulders, matted with dirt and the scent of rejection that clung to her like a curse she couldn't wash away. Above her, the moon hung swollen and red. It wasn't the gentle goddess she once prayed to. No. Tonight, the moon looked down like a cruel witness, as if it was ashamed of her too. The sound of boots thundered behind her, guards, wolves, men hungry for obedience. Their growls tore through the night, mixing with the shouts of the crowd. Bring her back. She defied the alpha blood. She carries cursed fire. Each word pierced her like a spear. Lyra stumbled behind a fallen statue, a stone goddess whose face had long eroded. She pressed herself against the cold marble, chest heaving, her heart beating too loud, too alive. She could taste iron, her own blood, at the back of her throat. She dared a glance toward the square. The auction post still stood, thick wooden beams that once bound slaves, criminals, traitors. Tonight, they'd wanted to bind her there too. Not to sell her. To destroy her. Her fingers shook as she clutched her wrist, the mark. The one the moon goddess herself had blessed her with. The silver crescent that once glowed when he touched her. Cashin. His name still burned her lips like a prayer she wasn't allowed to say. Cashin, her fated mate. The Alpha Prince. The man who'd once sworn under moonlight to protect her, to claim her, to love her beyond blood and duty. And yet, in front of thousands, he'd looked at her like she was nothing. Like she was filth that somehow wandered into a sacred hall. Unfit, he'd said. Cursed. The words hadn't just come from his mouth, they came from his heart. She saw it in his eyes, the disgust, the fear. Now the mark on her wrist, once a shimmering thread of light that tied their souls together, was blackened. Dead. A mark of rejection. She pressed her palm over it, willing it to glow again, willing it to mean something, but it stayed cold. Why, she whispered into the dark, voice trembling like the wind itself might break her. Lightning split the sky, white and violent. For a heartbeat, the world looked like glass, everything sharp, fragile, breakable. Her reflection flickered in the puddle beside her. Eyes not golden anymore, but silver, flickering faintly with light she didn't understand. That frightened her. Not the soldiers, not the jeers, not even death. But that strange flicker inside her, that whisper of power she couldn't name. Because it didn't feel human. It didn't feel wolf. It felt ancient. The storm thickened, rain mingling with ash from the burning pyres around the square. She could see the grand temple in the distance, where, just days ago, she'd stood under the sacred moonlight in a gown woven with moon silk, waiting for Cashin to place his hand upon her heart and seal their bond. But he hadn't placed his hand there. He'd turned away. And the council had whispered that the goddess made a mistake. That Lyra of the silver flame was too dangerous to be loved. The same council now wanted her burned. Thunder cracked, and she flinched, dragging herself deeper into the ruins. Her body screamed for rest, but her spirit refused to die quietly. Through the haze of smoke, she could still hear the auctioneer's voice echoing in her head. The cursed she-wolf. Claimed by no pack. Rejected by the Alpha Prince himself. How easily they twisted love into shame. Lyra pressed her back to the wall, sliding down until she was crouched, her fingers digging into the dirt. Her breath shook. Her throat ached. But her eyes, they burned. That was the thing about rejection, it didn't kill you instantly. It left you alive, just enough to feel every wound reopen when you remembered who you used to be. Her mind flashed back, Cassian's touch, once tender, now a memory too sharp to hold. The ceremony lights, the song of the moon priestesses, the way everyone looked at her like she was chosen. Chosen. How could she have known that being chosen meant being cursed? A drop of rain hit her cheek. It was cold. She tilted her face up, whispering into the night, "Is this what you wanted, goddess? Is this the destiny you gave me?" No answer came. Only thunder. Only silence thick enough to drown in. Then, softly, too softly to be real, a voice in her head. "You are not done yet." Lyra froze. Her pulse quickened. The words weren't her own thoughts, they came from somewhere deep, from the mark itself. She looked down, and for the briefest second, the blackened crescent shimmered. Silver light pulsed beneath her skin, faint but alive. Her fingers trembled. No. It couldn't be. Her power, the one the council feared, the one Cassian rejected, wasn't gone. It was waking up. She pushed to her feet, shaky but fierce, her bare toes gripping the stone. The storm howled louder. The banners of the Empire whipped violently in the wind. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled, a sound too mournful, too raw. Lyra's heart answered. She didn't even know she could still do that, feel the pull of the pack she no longer belonged to. She took a step toward the open street, the silver fire in her veins growing warmer, more insistent. Her body hurt, but something in her spirit whispered to keep moving. To run. The guards' torches appeared again in the distance. Their voices carried through the rain. She couldn't have gone far. Find her. By order of the High Alpha, she dies before dawn. Lyra's breath hitched. Her gaze darted to the horizon, the mountains of Drager, where the old ruins slept. If she could make it there, she could hide until sunrise. Another step. Then another. Her hand brushed against the crumbled statue beside her, the face of the forgotten goddess. For a moment, the stone felt warm, as though the goddess herself pitied her. "Please," Lyra whispered. "Just one more chance. Let me live." The wind shifted. And in that instant, the moon broke free from the clouds, flooding the square with silver light. It hit her face, her mark, her tears. And for the first time since her rejection, Lyra didn't look like a broken girl running for her life. She looked like something else. Something rising. Her reflection in a puddle shimmered, eyes of molten silver staring back, not with fear, but fury. The ground trembled beneath her feet. She could feel it, the energy, the heartbeat of the world responding to her grief. The ancient bond between moon and flame waking deep inside her bones. Maybe this was what they feared. Not her curse. But her becoming. The wind carried voices, soldiers closing in, the clatter of armor, the cruel laughter of men who thought her helpless. She swallowed the lump in her throat, her body shaking with exhaustion, her heart screaming with one truth she couldn't ignore. Cassian had rejected her. But fate hadn't. She would live. Even if the world burned for it. She turned, stepping into the open square again, the rain washing blood and ash from her skin. Torches lit up in the distance, her hunters. And yet, for the first time, she didn't run. She lifted her chin. The mark on her wrist glowed faintly under the stormlight, like a whisper of what she used to be, and what she could still become. The air around her pulsed. The storm seemed to bend toward her, thunder rolling like a drumbeat. The scent of lightning filled her lungs. Every instinct screamed to hide, to flee, but her spirit stood its ground. She wasn't done yet. If your heart beats for stories of love, power, and redemption, stay with me. Because this is where hearts shatter, and rise again. This is Sophie's Romance Collections. Kindly subscribe. The sound of pursuit closed in, boots striking stone, armor clinking, voices cutting through the storm like blades. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The rain had turned to needles against her skin, sharp, relentless, unforgiving. She pressed her back to the wall, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the world. She could see them now, 3 guards moving through the fog, torches casting gold over wet marble. Their scent hit her before their faces did, steel, sweat, blood. Wolves. Trained, loyal, merciless. She turned to run, only to find herself trapped between the broken columns of the colonnade and the drop to the lower square below. Too far to jump. Too close to escape. Her pulse raced. The air was thick with dread. The torches grew brighter, their flames licking through the fog like the eyes of beasts waiting to devour. Over there, one barked. The cursed ones hiding by the shrine. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, her fingers trembling over the stone. Her mind screamed to move, but her body had reached its limit. The exhaustion was bone deep now, heavy, dragging her towards surrender. But surrender never sat well with her soul. She braced herself. She would not die begging. Her breath steadied into something fierce, thin, ragged, but alive. She'd fight, even if it meant burning out her last spark. And then, everything stopped. The air changed, so sudden, so complete, that even the storm seemed to hold its breath. The wind, once raging, went still. The torches flickered, their flames shrinking as though cowed by something unseen. A low growl rolled through the mist, deep and ancient, carrying weight like thunder wrapped in silk. The guards froze. One of them turned, his voice shaking. "Who's there?" From the fog, a figure stepped forward. Cloaked. Tall. The stormlight caught strands of silver hair beneath the hood, wet and gleaming like threads of moonlight. His scent hit first, old power, wild earth, smoke. The kind of scent that stirred instinct before reason, that made her wolf stir in her blood even when she wanted to run. The guard straightened, uncertain. One reached for his blade, but his hand trembled. The figure kept walking, slow and unhurried, as though he didn't see men before him, only obstacles beneath his notice. Then came his voice. Calm. Deep. A voice made to command. Leave her. Just 2 words. But they carried the force of an alpha's roar, ancient and absolute. The torches dimmed. The rain itself seemed to recoil. The lead guard swallowed. By order of the High Alpha, she's to be taken. A single growl cut him off. Not loud, but low enough to make their knees weaken. The kind of sound that reminded even the proudest wolf who truly ruled the night. They didn't speak again. The cloaked man stepped closer. The fog parted around him as if afraid to touch him. Lyra's eyes widened. She had heard that voice once before, years ago, when she was still a girl listening to tales whispered by the temple wolves. Lucien Draven. The exiled Alpha. The father of the current king. The one who had vanished when the old bloodlines fell. But he wasn't supposed to exist anymore. She pressed herself tighter to the wall, unsure whether to thank the gods or curse them. The guards backed away, heads bowed without realizing why. Their instincts knew. Their bodies remembered what their minds had forgotten, that once, long before Cassion's reign, this man's will had been law. Lucien's eyes lifted, cutting through the dark until they met hers. Molten steel. That was the only way to describe them. Bright, burning, unreadable. The kind of eyes that stripped you bare before you even spoke. He moved closer. His boots barely made a sound against the wet marble. Lyra of the silver flame, he said, voice quiet but carrying like thunder in her bones. Her name in his mouth felt dangerous. Like it wasn't just a name anymore, but a summons. Her throat tightened. How do you know me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her face with unnerving calm. As if searching for something long lost. The Empire shouts your name, he said finally. But they don't know what it means. She swallowed hard. And you do? He stepped close enough that the heat of him cut through the cold. I've known your kind before the court learned to fear it. The rain trickled down his hood, sliding over his jaw, catching the faint scar that cut through his left cheek. The mark didn't dull his beauty, it defined it. His presence was sharp, magnetic, unyielding. He looked at her chains, the iron cuffs still biting into her wrists. Without another word, he reached out. His claws extended, gleaming faintly silver under the stormlight. With one clean motion, he sliced through the metal like it was paper. The sound rang out, a single note of freedom. Lyra flinched as the bindings fell away, clattering against the stone. She rubbed her wrists, the skin raw and bleeding. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered, voice trembling between gratitude and suspicion. Lucien tilted his head, watching her as though the question itself was strange. "Because I don't like watching the strong die for the sins of the weak." She blinked. "You think I'm strong?" "I think," he said slowly, "you've survived something meant to break you." His words hit her harder than any blow. The rain had slowed to a drizzle now, the storm seeming to bend around them. In the flickering light, he looked less like a man and more like something carved from the old myths, ageless, powerful, untamed. But beneath that power, there was something else. A shadow. A weariness in the set of his shoulders, a ghost behind his eyes. He should have been her enemy. The father of the man who destroyed her. Yet he was standing between her and death, and she couldn't understand why. "Lucien Draven," she said softly, testing the name. "You were supposed to be dead." His lips curved, not a smile, but something darker. "That's what they prefer to believe." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. And yet, there was something in the way he looked at her, something that made her heart stutter in confusion. Recognition. Not the kind of recognition that comes from fame, but something deeper, older. As if his soul already knew hers. He reached up, pulling back his hood. His hair caught the faint light, silver, streaked with white at the temples, the kind of color time couldn't dull. His skin bore the faint shimmer of the ancient bloodline, the kind said to be blessed by the moon itself. When his eyes met hers again, they weren't just looking. They were seeing. Her pulse jumped. "What do you want from me?" He stepped closer, voice low. "To keep you alive." That shouldn't have sounded like a promise, but it did. Behind them, a distant horn blew, another patrol approaching. Lyra tensed. Her body still remembered fear, even when her heart didn't want to. Lucien turned his head slightly, listening. Then, without warning, he moved. One arm swept around her, strong and steady, pulling her against him as he stepped back into the shadows of the colonnade. His body radiated heat, the scent of smoke and rain wrapping around her like armor. She felt the rumble of his chest when he spoke. "Don't move." The guards passed just beyond the pillars, their torches slicing through fog, too close. Lyra held her breath. Lucien's hand rested lightly at her waist, steady, grounding. Every muscle in her body was aware of him. One guard stopped, sniffing the air. "She's close," he muttered. Lucien's eyes flickered, a warning gleam cutting through the dark. The guard's face blanched, his instincts faltering as if something unseen pressed down on him. He stumbled back. "Let's check the north passage." The others followed. Silence returned. Only the rain. Only their breathing. Lyra realized then that her hands were gripping his cloak, knuckles white. She released him, stepping back, heat rushing to her face. Sorry. I didn't mean to." His gaze softened just slightly, barely visible. "You're freezing." "I've been worse," she said. "I doubt it." The way he said it made her chest tighten. Lucien reached out again, not to restrain, not to command, but to lift her chin. His fingers were rough, calloused, yet strangely gentle. "They'll keep hunting you," he murmured. "The council fears what they don't control. And you, Lyra, you're not meant to be controlled." Her throat tightened. "You sound like you know what that's like." He didn't answer, but his silence was an admission. She studied him, trying to piece together what kind of man would risk the Empire's wrath for a girl like her. But the longer she looked, the less sense it made. There was no calculation in his eyes, only something raw, unguarded. "What did they tell you about me?" she asked. "That you were dangerous," he said simply. "And you believe them?" He shook his head. "I believe in what I see." "And what do you see?" For the first time, his composure cracked. His voice dropped, quiet, almost reverent. "I see fire that refuses to die." The words landed somewhere deep inside her. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. There was something wrong about this moment, wrong in the way it made her chest ache, wrong in the way his presence silenced every thought that wasn't his voice. Lucien stepped back first, as if sensing it too. His hand brushed her arm briefly, the touch barely there but enough to ignite the air between them. "Come," he said, his tone regaining its steadiness. "This city isn't safe for either of us." "Either of us?" The words lingered. Lyra hesitated, glancing toward the temple spires. "If I go with you, what happens then?" His eyes glowed faintly, catching the stormlight like liquid metal. "Then you learn why fate doesn't make mistakes. It only waits." Before she could answer, the horn sounded again, closer this time, echoing through the marble arches. Lucien turned, cloak flaring, and extended a hand. "Now, Lyra." She looked at it, his hand, his promise, the unknown that came with both. Every instinct warned her this was a path she could never undo. And yet, her hand moved on its own. When their palms met, heat surged through her veins. She gasped. A faint light flickered between their joined hands, the silver crescent on her wrist glowing once more, and on his palm, its mirror image. She stared at him, disbelief flooding her. "You." He didn't let her finish. "Later," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes told another story, shock, recognition, and something dangerously close to longing. Without another word, he pulled her into the fog. Behind them, the Empire hunted. Ahead, the mountains waited. And in the space between them, fate twisted its thread tighter, binding two souls that should never have met. In a world built on blood and loyalty, she found salvation in the hands of the one man she was never meant to trust. The storm had only begun. The path wound upward, steep and slick from the rain, cutting through the dark like a scar carved into the mountain's heart. Every step burned through Lyra's legs. Her lungs dragged in the cold air that tasted of iron and pine. The forest around them whispered with the voices of unseen things, branches creaking under the weight of snow, the distant howl of wolves far below. Lucien moved ahead, silent but watchful. The hood of his cloak was down now, silver hair damp and unbothered by the weather, as though the storm itself dared not touch him. His stride was relentless, his every motion carved with purpose. He didn't look back, yet she could feel his awareness brushing over her, sharp and constant, protective, but distant. The fog thickened. Her heartbeat filled the space between footfalls, between breaths. Each step away from the city brought her closer to a past she had tried to bury. It started with a sound, a faint ringing, like temple bells in the distance. Memory followed. The mountains faded. The storm blurred. And suddenly, she was standing once more beneath the marble dome of the moon temple. The air there had always smelled of incense and burning sage, of night-blooming flowers gathered only under the full moon. Light poured through the glass ceiling, pure and cold, bathing her in silver. She had worn white that night, her hair unbound, the mark on her wrist glowing faintly like living flame. The priestesses had chanted her name in reverence. Lyra of the silver flame. Chosen of the goddess. She'd believed them then. Believed the mark was a blessing, not a curse. Cassian had stood across from her, his crown gleaming, his wolf aura bright and young, golden as sunlight. He had smiled, once. A smile that had made her believe fate could be kind. But fate had teeth. The prophecy had already been whispered through the halls before that night, the one who carries silver fire will unseat the Alpha bloodline. To the council, that meant danger. To Cassian's mother, it meant death. Lyra remembered the way the queen had looked at her, eyes like frost, voice soft enough to cut. She will destroy you, my son. The mark she bears is not divine. It's ruin. and Cassian, young, proud, unsure, had listened. So when the temple bells rang for the bonding, when the moonlight fell perfectly across them both, he had stepped back. His voice had been calm. Public. Cruel in its restraint. I reject this bond. The words had echoed through the chamber like a curse. The priestesses gasped. The moonlight dimmed. The mark on her wrist burned cold. Rejection wasn't supposed to be possible for one chosen by the goddess. The bond should have anchored their souls. Instead, it shattered, and with it, everything she was meant to be. Lyra remembered the silence that followed, the humiliation pressing down until she could barely breathe. The crowd of nobles staring. The queen's faint smile. The way Cassian hadn't even looked at her when she fell to her knees. From that moment, she was no longer Lyra of the silver flame. She was the cursed one. The harbinger. The threat. The council had stripped her titles. The temple sealed its doors. And by dawn, her name had become a warning whispered to pups at night. The pain of it lived still in her bones. It surfaced now, sharp as the cold wind slicing across the ridge. Her foot slipped on the slick stone, jerking her back to the present. Lucien caught her before she fell, his hand steady at her waist. The contact sent heat through her that didn't belong to the fire of memory. His voice was quiet. "You're shaking." "I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked. He didn't move his hand. "No, you're not." Something in his tone wasn't pity, it was knowing. The kind of knowing that came from someone who had also fallen from grace and survived it. "Keep your strength," he murmured. "You'll need it soon." She wanted to ask what that meant, but the question tangled in her throat. They kept walking, and the forest deepened, ancient trees towering like sentinels, their roots twisting through stone. The rain had slowed to a whisper, the mist glowing faintly where moonlight broke through. Her mind refused to stay silent. She remembered the days that followed her exile. The endless flight across burned lands. The hunters. The betrayal of her own pack. The scars she still bore on her back, carved not by claws but by chains. She remembered hiding in the ruins of the old world, learning to survive on hunger and hate. The mark on her wrist had faded, but never fully. It always glowed when the moon rose, mocking her, reminding her she was still bound to a destiny denied. Now, it burned again. Faint but steady. She glanced down at it. Lucien noticed. His gaze dropped briefly to her wrist, then back to the path. "It's reacting," he said. She frowned. "To what?" He hesitated. "Not what. Who?" The silence that followed was heavy. She knew what he meant. "The mark connects souls," he continued, his tone low. "It doesn't vanish with rejection. It only waits." "Waits for what?" "For truth," he said simply. The word sank into her like a blade. Truth. The thing she'd stopped believing in years ago. But as she studied him, the steady way he moved, the stormlight in his eyes, the faint glow mirrored on his palm, she couldn't ignore what pulsed between them. A pull that didn't belong to logic or fear. It wasn't Cassian's bond that stirred her now. It was something older. Wilder. "You knew about me," she said quietly. "Long before tonight." Lucien didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened. "I knew your name before the council did. I knew the prophecy before they twisted it." She stopped walking. "Then tell me the truth. What was it really?" He turned to face her. The wind caught the edge of his cloak, lifting it slightly. "It never said you'd unseat the alpha bloodline. It said you would purify it. Restore what was lost." Her breath caught. "That's not what they told me." "They feared what they couldn't control," he said. "The prophecy spoke of a union, of silver flame meeting ancient blood. It would have made the line stronger. Unbreakable. But the queen knew what that meant. She'd lose her power." "Yes." His eyes hardened. And she would burn the world before letting that happen. The mountain wind roared between them, scattering the mist. Lyra's throat ached with unshed words. So she turned Cassian against me. He was young, Lucien said quietly. Too easily led. Her laugh was bitter. And you? What's your excuse for saving me now? His gaze held hers. Maybe I'm tired of watching the innocent pay for the sins of those who wear crowns. Her pulse stumbled. The space between them tightened, charged. Lucien's expression softened, just barely. Or maybe, he said, voice rough, I saw the mark on your wrist and realized the goddess doesn't make mistakes. She looked down, heart hammering, afraid to meet his eyes again. The mark glowed brighter now, as if stirred by the sound of his voice. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. His scent, smoke, pine, rain, wrapped around her, grounding and intoxicating all at once. Your fire was never meant to destroy, he said. It was meant to reveal. Reveal what? She whispered. His voice dropped lower, the words almost reverent. The truth that even darkness serves the moon. Something inside her cracked open. All the years of rage, of running, of burying her pain under defiance, suddenly felt weightless. But before she could speak, a howl echoed through the valley below. Then another. The hunt was still on. Lucien's hand brushed her arm, pulling her back to the moment. We have to move. They pushed upward again, through brush and stone until the trees parted to reveal a ledge overlooking the valley. The city lights flickered far below, faint and unreachable. The night stretched endless around them. Lyra's body trembled with exhaustion, but her mind burned. Every memory replayed behind her eyes, the rejection, the shame, the prophecy twisted into poison. And now, this man beside her, the one who should have been her enemy, had undone her chains and dragged her into something far deeper than freedom. He crouched near the edge, scanning the woods below. We'll rest soon, he said. There's a cave near the ridge. Hidden. Safe. She didn't answer. She was staring at the mark again. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. And faintly, so faintly, she could feel something within it, an echo of another pulse. His. Lucien turned, eyes narrowing slightly as if he felt it too. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was alive with unspoken things. Then he said, almost to himself, the bond wasn't broken after all. Lyra shook her head. No. Cassian rejected me. It shattered. Lucien stepped closer. Rejection can't undo what the moon binds. It only delays it, until the right soul appears. Her heart stilled. You're saying. I'm saying, he interrupted softly, that fate doesn't repeat itself. It corrects its course. The words tore through her. She wanted to deny them, to step back, to silence the impossible pull rising in her chest. But when he reached out and his fingers brushed her wrist, the mark blazed bright silver, the light spilling across their skin. For one suspended heartbeat, she saw everything. The temple, burning. The moon weeping light. Two wolves, one crowned in gold, one cloaked in silver, circling each other under a bleeding sky. And between them, the goddess's voice whispering, balance will return through what was forsaken. The vision vanished as suddenly as it came. Lyra gasped. Lucien's hand tightened briefly, steadying her as she staggered. What did you see? He asked, though his voice was already heavy with knowing. She swallowed. Truth. He nodded once, quiet, solemn. Then you finally see who you are. Her eyes burned. And who's that? The key, he said, his gaze never wavering. To end what my son began. The words settled like prophecy itself. Below them, the howls grew louder. But neither moved. The storm had passed, yet the tension between them was a storm of its own, one that no rain could wash away. Lucien's voice came softer now, stripped of its command. You've carried your pain long enough, Lyra. Don't let it define you. Let it forge you. Her chest ached. And what about you? She asked quietly. What do you carry? He turned away, his silhouette framed against the pale moonlight. Everything I've lost, he said. And everything I still owe. She watched him for a long moment, understanding dawning like dawn itself, slow, inevitable, unforgiving. She wasn't just running from the Empire anymore. She was running towards something older than vengeance. Something that tied her fate to his in ways neither of them could yet name. She had been rejected by a prince, condemned by a queen, forsaken by her gods. But standing in the shadow of an exiled alpha, Lyra began to understand that her curse had never been a punishment. It was a calling. The ruins rose before them like the bones of forgotten gods. Moonlight spilled across the shattered pillars, tracing symbols half buried beneath moss and time. The air was cold, yet it pulsed with a strange warmth, as though the stones themselves remembered what it meant to be alive. Lyra stopped at the threshold. Her breath caught as her gaze swept across the expanse, an ancient sanctum carved into the mountain's heart. The roof had collapsed centuries ago, leaving the open sky as its only witness. Pale vines clung to every surface, their leaves silver under the moon's gaze. And at the center, surrounded by a ring of worn carvings, lay a pool of still water that shimmered as if stirred by invisible hands. Lucien stepped forward without hesitation. His voice dropped low, almost reverent. Lunara Sanctum, he said. The birthplace of the first bond. Before empires. Before kings. Lyra followed slowly, her eyes tracing the faint runes along the stones. Each one glowed faintly as she passed, responding to something inside her she couldn't name. Her pulse echoed in her ears. This place, it feels alive. It is, Lucien murmured. The moon's breath still lingers here. Every alpha line began with its blessing. Every power traces back to this ground. She knelt beside the pool, fingers brushing its surface. The water rippled, revealing flashes of light beneath, symbols shifting, rearranging themselves. One flared brighter than the rest. A wolf's head. A flame within its mouth. Lucien's voice carried across the silence. The mark you bear was first given here. Her throat tightened. Then why bring me back? Because prophecy returns to where it began, he said simply. He knelt opposite her, setting his hand upon the stone circle. His claws traced the lines of an ancient sigil, one she'd seen before in fragments, carved into temple walls, whispered in prayers. The moment his hand met the runes, the ground pulsed with light. The pool shimmered violently, and the air thickened with power. Lyra's mark began to glow. At first faint, then blinding. The silver light crawled up her wrist, winding along her arm like liquid fire. She gasped, trying to pull back, but the energy held her in place. Lucien. Don't fight it, he said, voice firm but steady. It's recognizing you. The light spread to her chest, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Around them, the ruins stirred. Dust lifted. Symbols reignited. Whispers filled the air, ancient words in a language she didn't know, yet somehow understood. The voice was everywhere and nowhere, echoing through bone and blood. Child of flame, bound to the fallen Alpha. Her breath shuddered. The words reverberated inside her skull, searing into her mind like fire. What does it mean? She whispered. Lucien's gaze didn't waver. It means the prophecy wasn't about Cashin. It was about me. The light flared, and for a heartbeat, she saw him not as he stood before her, but as something older, taller, crowned in shadow and silver, eyes burning with the weight of centuries. She saw wolves kneeling before him, moons splitting above battlefields, rivers running red. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving her trembling. You were the fallen Alpha, she said softly. He nodded once. I was banished when I refused to let the council twist the prophecy. They called me traitor. Said I sought to destroy the balance. But I was only trying to preserve it. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. You've been waiting. For me. Yes. The word lingered between them, heavy and impossible. She shook her head. That can't be true. You couldn't have known who I'd be. I didn't know your name, he admitted. But I knew the signs. The fire in your mark. The pole in the moon. The night you were born, the stars shifted, the same way they did when I was cast out. The goddess doesn't make coincidences. Lyra wanted to argue, to break free from the gravity of his words. But the light around them pulsed again, and the reflection in the pool changed. She saw herself, not as she was now, but cloaked in flame, her eyes alight with silver fire, her hair moving as though caught in a silent wind. And beside her, a figure, Lucien, standing not as her savior, but her equal. The vision struck deep. It wasn't prophecy anymore. It was memory from the future. She drew in a sharp breath, stumbling back, clutching her wrist. I'm not ready for this, she said, voice shaking. I can't be what this place wants me to be. Lucien rose, his shadow stretching long across the stone. You already are, he said quietly. You just haven't accepted it. I'm not the goddess's chosen, she snapped. I was rejected. Cursed. You saw what I became, what they made me. He stepped closer, eyes glinting in the light. You think the moon chooses saints? It chooses survivors. Those who burn and still rise. Her chest tightened. The defiance in her voice faltered. Why me? He studied her, expression unreadable. Because you carry what I lost. What did you lose? My faith, he said simply. The words hit harder than she expected. She turned away, trying to steady her breath, but the ground trembled beneath her feet. The pool erupted in a shimmer of light, beams striking the sky. The whispers grew louder, faster, child of flame. Child of flame. Lyra's body convulsed. The mark seared through her veins. Images flooded her mind, the moon crying silver tears, wolves kneeling in shadows, a flame devouring a crown. She screamed, collapsing to her knees. Lucien caught her, holding her upright as her body shook with power too vast for flesh. His arms were strong, grounding her even as the world blurred. Breathe, he said, voice steady but strained. Let it through you. Don't resist. I can't. You can. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his cloak as light spilled from her skin. For a moment, their marks burned as one, two threads of silver light twisting together, pulsing in sync. The ruins trembled. The whispers became a roar. Then, as suddenly as it began, the energy broke, leaving only silence and the sound of their breathing. Lyra collapsed against him, chest heaving, body trembling from the aftermath. The pool's surface stilled, the carvings dimming back into sleep. Only one symbol remained faintly glowing, the intertwined wolves, their forms half flame, half shadow. Lucien looked down at her, his expression unreadable. Now you know, he said softly. She lifted her head, eyes wide, still reflecting traces of silver light. Know what? That the goddess doesn't punish, he said. She prepares. Her voice came weakly. For what? He met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw the weight he carried, not just power, but sorrow. For the return of balance. For the reckoning that's coming. Lyra swallowed hard. The night air pressed close, thick with meaning. And I'm supposed to bring it? He nodded slowly. Not alone. The prophecy said the child of flame would be bound to the fallen Alpha. Together, they would restore what was broken. Her chest tightened. Bound, she repeated, the word barely a whisper. You mean? Yes, he said, and there was no softness in it. Only truth. Our fates were intertwined long before either of us chose it. She stepped back, shaking her head. That's not possible. My bond was with Cassian. I felt it. I lived it. Lucien's voice deepened. And he rejected it. Which means the goddess reclaimed it. Bonds cannot die, Lyra. They can only be remade. The night seemed to draw breath around them. Every shadow held its own heartbeat. Every gust of wind whispered her name. Lyra closed her eyes, torn between disbelief and the pulse that answered every word he spoke. Her body betrayed her denial, each beat of her heart synced to the rhythm of his. When she opened her eyes, Lucien was still watching her, his face calm, his eyes dark with something more dangerous than power. "I don't want to belong to fate," she whispered. "Then don't," he said. "Belong to yourself first. Then choose what fate gives you." She stared at him, the words sinking deep, raw and true. Above them, the moon trembled, its light shifting into a strange hue, neither silver nor white, but pale gold tinged with crimson. The mark on her wrist pulsed once more, but now it didn't burn. It hummed. Alive. Awake. The ruin settled back into silence. The pool reflected the moon again, calm but watchful. Lyra could still feel the energy beneath her skin, coiled, waiting. Lucien turned toward the mountain's edge, his voice quiet but certain. "The goddess has marked the beginning. There's no turning back now." She followed his gaze, her heart still racing. "What happens next?" He looked down at her, and for the first time, his expression softened, not as a warrior, not as an exile, but as a man who had waited far too long for something he thought he'd lost. "Now," he said, "we find out why the moon chose us." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of ash and rain from the world below. Somewhere in the distance, the first howl of dawn rose, low, mournful, ancient. Lyra stood beside him, trembling from exhaustion and awakening both. Her past was gone, swallowed by fire and shame. Her future burned bright and unknown. And for the first time, she didn't feel cursed. She felt chosen. The mountains shudder beneath the weight of war drums. Their echo rolls through the valleys, stirring the mist, shaking the silence that once cocooned their fragile escape. The scent of rain and iron mixes with the wild tang of wolf blood. Above, the moon peers from behind veils of ash-colored clouds, watching the empire descend upon them. Lyra stands near the broken archway of the sanctum, her breath uneven, her fingers trembling against the rough stones. She can feel it, the air thickening with power, the pulse of something ancient awakening in her bones. The prophecy was no longer words carved in old stone. It was alive, and it beat through her veins like a second heart. Lucien stands before her, his presence cutting through the chaos like steel through smoke. His silver hair moves with the wind, his eyes reflecting the trembling light of the moon. He doesn't speak, but his aura says everything, he is ready. Behind him, shadows move, cloaked soldiers of the Alpha Kingdom spilling into the valley, their armor glinting under torchlight. Their chants rise, sharp and cruel, demanding her death, demanding the end of the curse. Lyra's body tenses. She can sense Cashin among them. His scent still lingers in her mind, the scent of cedar, fire, and betrayal. Her heart stumbles between fear and fury. He had once promised to protect her, to stand beside her before the goddess. Now, he leads the very army that calls her a monster. Lucien turns his head slightly, his voice a low rumble that seems to come from deep within the earth. "They have come for you," he says. "But they will not take you." Her throat tightens. "You can't fight them all." A faint smirk flickers on his lips, one that hides centuries of defiance. "I have fought worse." The first arrow cuts through the fog. It misses her by inches, embedding into the pillar behind her. The hiss of iron fills the air, and then the world erupts. Wolves shift mid-charge, the sound of bones cracking, claws striking stone, voices rising in rage. The council's priestesses chant from the ridges, their golden eyes glowing with borrowed divinity. Lyra feels the tremor in the earth as their power builds, as the mountain itself begins to resist her presence. Lucien moves faster than the eye can follow. His body expands, for rippling like liquid silver under the moonlight. His growl shakes the very breath from the air. The soldiers falter for a moment, the fallen Alpha has risen again. Lyra's chest tightens. Every beat of her heart calls to the power she's tried so long to bury. She sees Lucien tearing through the ranks, his claws leaving arcs of silver light. Yet even as he fights, she feels the pull inside her grow stronger, hungrier. The flames whisper to her, coaxing, promising salvation through destruction. When a spear grazes her shoulder, the whisper becomes a roar. Her knees buckle, but instead of falling, she rises. The mark on her wrist flares, brighter than it ever had, light crawling up her arm like living fire. The scent of burning fills the air. Her silver flame bursts forth, devouring the darkness, sweeping across the mountainside. The soldiers scream. The priestesses raise their shields of light, but they melt under the fire that does not burn flesh, it burns sin, lies, and guilt. The fire recognizes the truth, and it hungers for it. Lucien turns to her, eyes wide, not in fear but in awe. "You've awakened," he murmurs. Lyra's voice trembles, both in power and grief. "I didn't mean to." "Power never asks permission," he replies. It remembers. Then, through the burning haze, another presence emerges. Cassian. He steps forward slowly, his armor cracked, his sword drawn but trembling in his grasp. His face is pale, his eyes shadowed by disbelief. Around him, his army falters, their faith breaking under the sight of the woman they condemned standing in divine fire. "Lyra," he breathes, her name escaping his lips like a prayer he no longer deserves to speak. Her chest twists. She had imagined this moment countless times, the one where he'd finally look at her and see what he threw away. But now, there is no victory in it. Only sorrow. Lucien shifts back to his human form, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. The blood on his skin gleams like dark paint under the moon. He moves between them, his stance protective, claiming. Cassian's voice cracks. "Father, what are you doing?" Lucien doesn't look away from him. "Protecting what your arrogance almost destroyed." "She was mine." Cassian's words cut through the air like a blade, trembling with equal parts fury and heartbreak. Lucien's gaze hardens. "You had your chance." The silence that follows is heavier than the storm. Lyra can feel every heartbeat between them, every ounce of history and betrayal binding their souls together. Cassian lowers his sword slightly, confusion clouding the anger in his eyes. He looks at her, not as a curse, not as the outcast the council painted her to be, but as the woman he once loved, the woman glowing with the fire of the goddess. The priestesses recover, forming a circle around the mountainside. Their chants grow louder, summoning the ancient magic of the council. Symbols flare on the ground, pulsing with red light. Lucien senses it first, the spell meant to bind her, to seal her power forever. Lyra feels it too. The pressure builds, invisible chains wrapping around her wrists, her chest, her heart. The mark on her arm flickers. Lucien lunges forward, his claws slashing the earth, breaking the nearest seal. But there are too many. The mountain screams as light cracks across its surface. Lyra gasps, her knees hitting the ground. The spell pulls at her essence, trying to rip her from herself. The fire inside her writhes, desperate to stay alive. She can taste metal, salt, tears. Cassian watches in horror. He had come to destroy her, to prove his loyalty to the crown. But watching her crumble beneath the council's spell tears something from him. He can't move. He can't breathe. The woman he once called his mate is dying before him, and the father he resented now stands as her shield. Lucien roars, his voice shaking the air. "Fight it, Lyra. Do not let them take you." Her eyes snap open, silver light spilling from them like rivers of moonfire. She screams, not in pain, but in defiance. The mark on her arm erupts, flooding the valley with blinding brilliance. The seals shatter. The priestesses fall silent, their chants turning to cries of disbelief. And then, everything stills. Smoke drifts in gentle ribbons across the battlefield. The mountain exhales, the storm easing. Lyra stands, unbroken, her fire dimming to a soft glow. Lucien is beside her, his chest heaving. Cassian, on his knees, stares up at her as if he's seeing her for the first time. The air between them is thick with what's left unsaid, the echoes of choices, the weight of destiny. Lyra looks at Cassian, her voice low but steady. I was never your curse. You were mine. Lucien's hand brushes her shoulder, grounding her. The connection between them hums, quiet but undeniable. She glances at him, and for the first time, she sees what the goddess might have meant by fate, the binding of the broken, the healing of the forsaken. But peace is fragile. The Empire will not stop. The Council will not forgive. And the prophecy, now fully awakened, is only beginning to unfold. As the moon rises higher, its light bleeds silver across the ruins. Lyra knows what she must become. The fire within her is no longer a burden, it's her crown. And as she stands between the man who betrayed her and the man who saved her, she realizes that the world is shifting, that the old gods have chosen sides. War is no longer coming. It has begun. The catacombs breathe with an ancient chill, their walls sweating with the weight of centuries. Shadows stretch long and restless across the cracked stone, and the silence hums like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Water drips from unseen places, its rhythm soft and mournful. The firelight wavers, painting fleeting warmth across the coldness that clings to everything. Here, beneath the bones of forgotten gods, Lyra and Lucien find fragile shelter. Lyra kneels beside him, her hands trembling as she presses a strip of torn cloth against the wound along his ribs. His blood glistens darkly, thick and alive beneath her palms. She tries not to breathe too deeply, because every inhale fills her with his scent, iron, pine, and something dangerously wild, something that doesn't belong to this world anymore. Lucien doesn't flinch when she touches him. He only watches her, eyes steady, their silver light dimmed by exhaustion but still sharp enough to see straight through her. The torches behind her cast gold into her hair, the flicker turning her into something half divine, half untouchable. Yet here she is, her hands shaking, her lip caught between her teeth as she works to save him. You should rest, she murmurs, though her own body trembles with fatigue. He huffs a quiet laugh, a sound that seems too soft for a man who had just faced an army. You sound like her. Her gaze flicks up. Like who? My queen, he says quietly. She used to say the same thing before every battle. Always thinking I needed saving. His tone carries no bitterness, only a faint ache, an echo of something long buried. Lyra's breath stills. What happened to her? His eyes drift to the fire, its reflection dancing in the scar that cuts across his chest. The prophecy happened. The words fall like stones. Heavy. Unforgiving. He leans back against the wall, closing his eyes briefly as if to gather the memory. The moon goddess warned us that power comes with balance. That love, when bound to destiny, can turn into ruin if we try to own it. I didn't listen. I thought I could bend the fates. I thought love made me untouchable. Lyra's hands still. The warmth of his skin hums beneath her fingers, steady and strong despite his wounds. And it destroyed her? His jaw tightens. It destroyed us both. The fire crackles, the sound filling the hollow space between them. Lyra looks down at his chest, at the way the blood has slowed, at the faint shimmer of silver light healing where her touch lingers. She doesn't realize her power is moving through her again, quiet and instinctive. Lucien feels it too. He opens his eyes and meets her gaze, his voice low. You're healing me. I told you to rest, she says, trying to pull her hands back, but he catches her wrist, holding her there, not roughly, just enough to stop her from fleeing. It's not destruction, is it? He says softly. That's what they feared. They didn't see what it truly is. Lyra swallows hard. You don't understand. It's not just fire. It chooses who it heals, and who it burns. His thumb brushes against the back of her wrist, tracing the faint pulse there. And which am I? Her voice catches. I don't know yet. The air thickens between them. She can hear his breath, rough and uneven, mingling with hers. The flames on the torches sway toward them, as if the fire itself wants to listen. Lucien leans forward slightly, his voice quieter now. You're afraid of it. I'm afraid of losing control. He studies her for a long moment. Then maybe control isn't what you need. She exhales sharply, her eyes darting to his. You sound just like him when you say things like that. He tilts his head. Cashin? Her name for him tastes bitter now, but she nods. He used to tell me my power was beautiful. Until it threatened his crown. Lucien's expression darkens. He was raised by fear. The council twisted his love into duty. Lyra looks down, her hands curling into fists in her lap. Duty doesn't humiliate someone in front of an empire. Duty doesn't call love a curse. Lucien's voice drops, deep and unyielding. No. That was pride. Silence falls again. The torches hiss softly. In that silence, Lyra feels something shift, not in the air, but in her chest. The anger that had burned for so long begins to waver, replaced by something heavier, something far more dangerous. Understanding. Lucien watches her face change, his gaze tracing every flicker of emotion that crosses her features. You carry too much alone, he says. She shakes her head. I have to. Why? Because if I fall apart, she whispers, there's no one left to fight for what's right. Lucien leans closer, his breath brushing her skin. Then let someone fight with you. The way he says it, soft, certain, almost reverent, makes her chest tighten until she can hardly breathe. Her hand lifts before she can stop it, brushing against the scar at his jaw. It's a small touch, unthinking, but it unravels them both. Lucien's breath stills. His hand comes up, slow, deliberate, fingers tracing her face like a man memorizing something he knows he shouldn't touch. You shouldn't look at me like that, he murmurs. How am I looking at you? Like you want to believe me. Her voice trembles. Maybe I do. His thumb grazes her cheekbone. Then trust me. Her eyes search his. And if I do? Then the gods can damn the rest. For a heartbeat, neither moves. The space between them hums, fragile and electric. His breath mingles with hers, his lips close enough that she can feel the warmth of him. Her heart stumbles in her chest, every instinct screaming to close the distance. But she pulls back. The motion is small but sharp, breaking the moment like glass. Her voice shakes when she speaks. You're my mate's father. Lucien's jaw tightens, but his eyes don't waver. Then let the gods damn fate. The words hang in the air, heavy with defiance, with something older than love and deeper than rebellion. Lyra looks away, trying to steady the rhythm of her breath. Her chest aches. Not from fear, but from the way his voice made something inside her stir that she thought she'd buried. The silence that follows isn't cold this time. It's alive. Pulsing. Waiting. He turns from her, leaning his head against the wall. You should sleep, he says quietly. I can't. Then just close your eyes. The world will still be waiting to destroy us when you wake. She almost laughs, but it comes out as a broken sigh. You find comfort in that? I find truth in it, he murmurs. And truth is better company than hope. Lyra stares at the flames. Their light flickers across his face, softening the edges, revealing the man beneath the legend. For a fleeting second, she imagines what he was before the exile, before the throne, before the prophecy. And in that imagining, she finds a dangerous kind of peace. Hours pass. The torches burn low. The sound of their breathing becomes the rhythm of the room, two hearts beating in uneasy harmony. When she finally speaks again, her voice is barely a whisper. Lucien, what if the prophecy was never about destroying bloodlines? He opens his eyes, gaze steady. Then what was it about? Maybe it was about healing them. His expression shifts, the faintest trace of wonder crossing his features. Healing through fire, he murmurs. You said that earlier. She nods. Maybe the goddess didn't choose me to burn the world. Maybe she chose me to cleanse it. Lucien's hand brushes her wrist again, slow, deliberate. Then the Empire should tremble. Because that kind of fire doesn't die easily. Lyra looks up at him, the tension softening, though the pull between them remains, unspoken, undeniable. The catacombs hum with their quiet war of restraint. And in the flicker of that last flame, she realizes something she doesn't dare say aloud: she's no longer running from fate. She's standing beside it. And it looks a lot like him. The day begins with silence so heavy it feels like the sky itself is holding its breath. Lyra stands at the edge of the ruined catacombs, the last place where the world had felt almost kind. The morning air is cold and wet, filled with the smell of moss and smoke. She looks out at the mountains, at the mist that coils between them like ghosts. For a moment, she believes they have a chance, that the worst is behind them. But the gods have always been cruel to hope. By noon, the Empire's banners appear on the horizon. Black and red, snapping in the wind, carrying the weight of command and judgment. Lucien's soldiers, what few remain loyal to him, move quietly through the forest, preparing for what feels inevitable. Lyra's heart is a restless drumbeat beneath her ribs. She knows this calm won't last. She can feel it in her bones, the kind of stillness that comes right before the storm takes everything. When the emissaries arrive, they wear white robes and silver masks, symbols of peace in a world that knows no such thing. Their voices are smooth, practiced, too kind. The council seeks truce, they say. A chance for forgiveness. For unity. Lyra looks to Lucien. His eyes are narrow, unreadable. She knows he doesn't trust them. Neither does she. But they've been running for too long, fighting for too many nights with no sleep, no food, no end in sight. The promise of peace, however false, feels like a breath they both need. Lucien says nothing for a long time. Then, finally, he nods once. If they want to talk, he says, we'll talk. They travel to the capital at dusk. The same city where her life was torn apart, the same square where she had once stood, chained and humiliated under the judgment of the moon. Every step feels like a return to her own execution. The scent of incense and iron fills her lungs. The streets are lined with spectators, faces cold, eager, waiting for a spectacle they don't understand. Lucien walks beside her, his cloak brushing against hers, his presence a quiet storm. His hand grazes her back as if to anchor her. Stay close, he murmurs. But the trap has already been set. The peace delegation leads them into the imperial arena, the heart of the empire. Once, it had hosted battles between kings. Today, it is dressed in gold banners and pale fire, too bright, too staged. Lyra realizes too late that the gates behind them have already shut. The roar of the crowd swells, and her blood runs cold. From the royal dais, the council rises, robes shimmering like frost. And at their center, Cassian stands. Her mate. Her rejection. His gaze finds hers across the distance, and for a fleeting second, she sees something like regret in his eyes. Then the mask slips back into place. The high priestess steps forward. Lyra of the silver flame, she calls, her voice echoing through the arena. You stand accused of deceit, of corruption, of carrying the power of rebellion within your blood. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Lyra stiffens, her breath catching. The priestess continues, you were never chosen by the goddess for love. You were born from her forbidden line, the child of those who defied divine law. Lucien's growl cuts through the air, sharp and feral. The guards flinch, but the priestess does not. She turns toward him, her voice dripping with accusation. And you, Lucien Draven, once Alpha King, have broken sacred law by binding yourself to her. By protecting the cursed blood. The crowd gasps, 1,000 whispers folding into one. Lyra's heart races. She looks at Cassian again, desperate for something, defense, denial, anything. But he doesn't move. He stands still, shoulders rigid, face unreadable. Lucien turns toward his son. Say it, he commands. Tell them this is a lie. Cassian's lips part, but no words come. His silence is worse than any sentence. Lyra's throat tightens. Cassian, she whispers, her voice trembling. You know me. He finally looks at her, really looks, and for the briefest instant, she sees the man she once loved. But the weight of his crown is heavier than his heart. His voice is low, almost breaking. I can't. The world tilts. The sound of the crowd fades into a dull roar. Lyra feels the ground disappear beneath her. Lucien steps forward, his fury contained in a breath that could split the earth. You would condemn her for the gift your own goddess gave? The priestess lifts her hand. That power was never meant for mortals. The prophecy warned of her kind. The child of flame will burn the empire. Lucien's reply is a snarl that shakes the air. Then let it burn. Gasps echo like thunder. Guards move, weapons raised, but the ground trembles before they can reach her. Lyra's breath turns to smoke, her vision blurs, and a voice, older than time, rises inside her. It whispers her name. Not as an accusation, but as an awakening. The silver mark on her wrist ignites. The same mark Cassian had once called cursed now blazes with the light of moons long dead. Pain surges through her veins, but it's not the kind that breaks, it's the kind that frees. Chains snap like brittle glass. The air turns white-hot. The crowd screams as silver fire bursts from her skin, unfurling like wings. The flames don't consume, they purify. They burn through falsehood, through fear, through the centuries of silence the council built on lies. Lucien doesn't move. He watches her, eyes bright with pride and sorrow, the way one watches a star being born. You see, he murmurs. You were never meant to be their sacrifice. The priestess shouts orders. Arrows fly, spears crash, but the fire swallows them all. Lyra falls to her knees, trembling, light spilling from her fingertips. The goddess's voice pulses through her mind. They will hate what they cannot control. But you were never made to be loved by them. Cassian tries to reach her then, calling her name, but the fire pushes him back. His face twists, not from pain, but from something deeper. Realization. Lyra looks up at him through the smoke. You left me to die, she says softly. His voice breaks. I was afraid. Lucien's shadow looms behind her, tall and unyielding. Then you were never worthy of her. Lightning cracks above the arena. The moon itself trembles. The council stumbles back as the sky turns silver white, as if the heavens themselves are bending toward her. Lyra rises, the chains at her feet melting into ash. Her voice carries, calm and terrible. You called me curse. But I was your warning. Every word seems to shake the stone beneath her feet. The statues around the arena begin to fracture, ancient carvings glowing with the same light that burns inside her. Lucien moves to stand beside her. The look they share is wordless, something between defiance and devotion. His hand brushes hers, just for a moment, grounding her in the storm she has become. Then, together, they face the Empire. The priestess screams, she will destroy us. Lucien's answer is quiet, final. No. You destroyed yourselves. The flames answer him. They roar to life, sweeping across the arena in a storm of light. The banners burn, the gold melts, the crowd flees in chaos. The sound of the goddess's power fills every breath of air. Cassian drops to his knees, covering his face as the Empire trembles around him. The arena floor cracks open, releasing the scent of the old world, the deep, wild earth that remembers before crowns, before laws. Lyra's voice rises over the chaos. The goddess does not punish. She restores. And then, silence. The fire fades, leaving only the faint glow of ash drifting through the air. The arena stands in ruin. The moon above is whole again, its light soft and strange. Lucien kneels beside her, his face streaked with soot and blood. He reaches out, his hand trembling slightly as he brushes her cheek. You did it, he whispers. You freed them. Lyra's eyes shimmer with exhaustion and disbelief. No, she breathes. I only started it. He smiles, a small, broken thing that still feels like hope. Then the Empire should pray you never stop. The weight of his words lingers. Around them, the city is silent, holding its breath once more. But this silence feels different, less like judgment, more like surrender. She meets his gaze, and in it, she finds the truth she had feared all along, that love and ruin are two sides of the same fire. And tonight, she has become both. The empire of wolves has fallen quiet, and somewhere deep within its heart, the goddess smiles. The sky burns with the memory of what once was. Smoke drifts over the broken towers, curling through the silence like morning breath. The empire that once glittered with arrogance lies undone, its marble cracked, its banners turned to ash. In the center of that ruin stands Lyra. Barefoot. Bleeding. Glorious. The silver fire still dances around her, its light bending the air as though the world itself bows to her pulse. Her chest rises slow, deliberate, every breath shaking loose another thread of fear that once bound her. Her eyes, once soft, once full of doubt, now gleam like forged steel beneath the moon. The power she once begged to hide now hums in every heartbeat. Her voice breaks the silence. Calm, unhurried, too steady for what the world has become. I am not your prophecy, she says. I am your reckoning. The words ripple outward, carried on the wind, swallowed by the dying echoes of the crowd that fled too late to forget. Every syllable sears itself into the bones of the city. Every heartbeat of hers becomes the Empire's last prayer. Lucien stands at her side, his coat scorched, his hand still bleeding from where he tore the chains away. He doesn't look like a king anymore. He looks like something older, something that crawled out of legend and chose to love again despite it. The glow of her power flickers across his face, painting him in silver fire. He doesn't flinch. He just watches her, as if seeing her for the first time in truth. Lyra, he murmurs, his voice low, reverent, more breath than sound. You were never meant to serve them. She turns to him. For a heartbeat, the fire around her softens. And yet I did, she answers. Until I realized obedience was just another form of worship to those who feared my kind. Their eyes meet, and for a long, raw moment, nothing exists but that tether, something fierce, something fated, something forbidden still. The space between them hums, alive with power and pain and everything they never said. The ground trembles beneath their feet. Cracks open, spreading through the arena like veins of light. From those fractures, ancient runes rise, symbols so old the air itself remembers how to kneel. They pulse in rhythm with Lyra's heartbeat, each one a breath of the old gods stirring from their endless sleep. Lucien's jaw tightens. He knows what this means. The power awakening now is not mortal. It is the memory of the first bond between wolf and flame, before the Empire chained either. Lyra steps forward, her bare feet leaving prints of silver light on the blackened earth. Her power radiates outward, not in fury this time, but in reclamation. The fire climbs the broken pillars and arches, not to destroy, but to cleanse. The cries of the wounded turn to sighs of relief as the flames bypass the innocent, touching only the corrupted sigils and banners of the council. Lucien moves closer, his aura merging with hers, dark and primal meeting light and divine. The two powers twist together, not as opposites, but as halves of the same origin. The air thickens. The scent of ozone and wolf musk fills the space between them. Lyra's gaze softens when it meets his. You were right, she says quietly. The goddess was never my curse. She was my reflection. Lucien's throat works as he struggles for words. And now? Now, she whispers, she remembers herself. The heavens answer her. Thunder cracks like drums of war. The moon blazes white, fuller than it's been in centuries. Every wolf in the realm howls as one, the sound echoing from mountain to sea. The old gods awaken, not in wrath, but in recognition. Lucien falls to one knee, not in surrender, but in reverence. The Empire is breaking, he says. Lyra looks down at him, firelight dancing across her skin. No, she answers. It's being reborn. Her power surges again, no longer wild, no longer defiant, but controlled, precise, alive. She lifts her hands and the fire obeys, weaving through the ruins like a living creature. It burns through old stone and blood-stained marble, through the council's chambers and their vaults of secrets. The energy doesn't consume, it purifies. For every wall that falls, the earth beneath it breathes again. Green light flickers through the cracks as the forest roots reclaim what was stolen. Rivers of molten silver flow where once there were streets. The Empire's foundations, once symbols of control, now crumble into something fertile and new. Cassian stands at the far end of the arena, half in shadow, half in light. Ash streaks his face. His armor, once polished to perfection, is now fractured, the sigil of his lineage split in two. He watches his father and the woman he betrayed rise as the world he defended falls apart around him. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. Tears carve paths through the soot on his cheeks. He has seen battle, betrayal, and loss, but this is the first time he understands what it means to lose something divine. Lyra's power glances toward him, brushing against his aura like the edge of truth. For an instant, she feels the flicker of the bond that once was, the echo of what could have been if love had been stronger than fear. But the past has no claim here. Her eyes harden, luminous and distant. I forgive you, she says quietly, though he's too far to hear. But I will not mourn what never dared to fight for me. Lucien rises behind her, his presence grounding her, keeping the fire from consuming her heart. He'll carry that loss longer than any chain, he murmurs. Lyra's power builds again, pulling from the cracks in the earth, from the breath of the moon, from every forgotten prayer whispered in secret. The air vibrates with it. Wolves beyond the walls shift beneath its call, feeling their blood answer hers. The divine and the feral intertwine. She raises her hand toward the heavens. The silver runes ignite, one by one, spiraling upward into a vast sigil above the arena. The symbol of the moon goddess flares to life, drawn in flame and starlight. The old gods answer, their presence like a pulse across the world. Lyra's voice carries through the air, strong and terrible. You tried to make me your weapon. Your prophecy. Your sacrifice. But I was never yours to claim. Her eyes close as the power surges through her veins. I am not your offering. I am the flame you buried, and the fire that remembers. The sigil explodes into light. It rains down as silver dust, falling softly upon the city. Wherever it lands, the people stir, the sick rise healed, the enslaved find their chains dissolved, the wolves feel their instincts sharpen with clarity rather than rage. The balance that the council stole is returning. The Empire doesn't die, it transforms. Lucien steps closer, his chest nearly brushing her back. The heat between them hums, not just with power, but with something human, something dangerously tender. His voice is rough when he speaks. You've done what no god ever dared. Lyra exhales, trembling from the weight of it all. Then let them remember that I did it not as divine, she says, her tone quiet and raw, but as woman. He reaches for her hand, not to control, not to claim, but to share the grounding pulse of his strength. Their fingers touch, and for the first time, the fire doesn't flare, it breathes. Their auras meld completely, two halves of power that no longer war against each other. The moonlight bends around them, weaving a single silhouette of shadow and flame. All around them, the runes sink back into the ground. The old gods retreat, their purpose fulfilled. But their presence lingers, humming through Lyra's blood, whispering of what's to come. Cassian watches as the final flames die out. He sees the way his father looks at her. Not with lust or conquest, but with the kind of reverence that only comes when a man kneels before something he can never own. And in that realization, Cassian finally understands why his father's heart could never belong to a throne. Lyra lifts her face to the sky. The moon's light wraps her in silver, reflecting off the streaks of blood and ash on her skin. She feels the hum of every heartbeat in the Empire beneath her feet. For the first time in her life, she feels whole. Not because the prophecy has been fulfilled, but because she has broken it. Lucien's voice brushes her ear. What will you do now? Her gaze sweeps across the horizon, over the ruins, the forests, the rivers glowing faintly with reborn magic. I will build a world where no one is born chained to another sphere. He nods slowly, a quiet smile ghosting across his face. Then I will walk beside you until it stands. She looks at him, truly looks, and for a heartbeat, the fire inside her flickers softer, gentler. You already do, she says. The night deepens, but it no longer feels cold. The moonlight spills across the broken stones, over their faces, over the remnants of the empire that dared to cage the divine. Somewhere in the distance, the first howl of the new age rises, a wolf's cry, long and low, echoing through the hollow bones of the fallen world. Lyra stands in its wake, no longer a symbol, no longer a victim. Her fire is quiet now, steady, like a heartbeat that belongs not to gods or kings, but to herself. She closes her eyes, and the final embers drift around her like stars returning home. The era of prophecy is over. The era of choice has begun. Dawn bleeds across the horizon, pale gold spilling through the smoke like mercy after judgment. The city lies quiet now, bones of stone and memory still breathing beneath the haze. Every tower that once shadowed her now bows to the rising sun. Lyra stands at the edge of the ruin, barefoot on the cooling marble, her hair tangled with soot and silver light. The last of the fire flickers across her skin, soft as heartbeat. Beneath her, the earth hums, not with destruction, but renewal. It feels alive, like something waking from a long, cruel sleep. Around her, the wolves gather. Not in chains. Not in fear. They come from the ashes, fur streaked with dust, eyes luminous in the dawn. They do not lower their heads in submission. They kneel in choice. One by one, they bow not to power, but to the freedom she fought for. The air is still heavy with what has been lost, but in it, there's something else too, the quiet thrum of hope. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't demand. It simply breathes. Lyra exhales, watching the wind carry away the last threads of smoke. For the first time in her life, she doesn't feel hunted. She feels seen. Lucien steps beside her, his movements slower now, deliberate, weighted by all they've survived. His wounds have stopped bleeding, but the scars glow faintly under the dawn, marks of both sin and salvation. He looks at her like a man seeing the dawn for the first time, even though he's centuries old. You were never meant to be his, he says quietly, his voice low, raw, unguarded. You were meant to be more. The words sink into her like a promise carved in flame. She turns to him, her eyes glimmering with light caught between tears and fire. And you, she whispers. What were you meant to be? He doesn't look away. The one who stood beside you when the world decided not to. Their hands find each other in the silence, slow, uncertain, inevitable. The warmth that passes between them isn't wild now. It's steady, sacred. A bond not born of prophecy or power, but of choice. Lyra closes her eyes, and the wind shifts. It carries the scent of earth after rain, of ash turned fertile. The fire within her hums, softer now, but alive. Eternal. In that quiet, something ancient stirs again, not wrath, not command, but blessing. The goddess doesn't speak this time, she only breathes through the whispering wind that curls around Lyra's hair and hums across her skin. The words are faint, older than language itself. The fire never dies. Lyra opens her eyes. The horizon burns gold. The wolves rise. The empire that once chained her now kneels at her feet, not to worship, but to begin again. And as the sun lifts higher, washing away the shadows, she feels the weight of every choice yet to come. The peace is fragile. The world will test her. But for now, she stands unshaken, a flame reborn in flesh, walking through the aftermath of gods. Lucien's fingers tighten around hers. There's no crown between them, no throne, only truth. She looks at him, not as savior, not as sinner, but as the only soul who saw her when everyone else looked away. She smiles, faintly. Then let's see what this new world becomes. He smiles too, and the sound of it, that quiet, almost broken sound, feels like a heartbeat finding rhythm again after silence. Above them, the wind carries the howl of the pack, not mourning, not rage, but renewal. It echoes through the ruins, through the mountains, through the bones of the old empire, calling the lost home. Lyra tilts her head, listening, her pulse steady with the rhythm of the wild. The fire flickers beneath her skin one last time, bright and defiant. She doesn't hide it anymore. Because now she knows, the flame was never her curse. It was her truth. And truth, once lit, can never die. The light stretches across her face as she lifts her gaze to the sky, where the moon still lingers faintly against dawn, watching, approving, fading. The story of the cursed girl ends here. The story of the woman she became is just beginning. Her whisper drifts on the wind, half vow, half warning. Let them try to bury me again. I'll rise in every spark they fear. The dawn breaks fully, spilling light across the world reborn from her ashes. And somewhere within that silence, a voice calls out to every soul listening, every heart still burning for stories of love, redemption, and the power to rise again. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn, heal, and haunt. The air hangs heavy in the aftermath, that fragile silence that follows the roar of gods. The ruins still smoke, the scent of ash and blood mingling with morning dew. The Empire, once a heartless machine of obedience and fear, lies quiet now, its bones bathed in the soft silver of dawn. Lyra and Lucien move through the wreckage slowly, their steps echoing over shattered marble and fallen banners. Each footstep feels like an ending, and a beginning all at once. The light catches in Lyra's hair, a glimmer of gold and flame woven together. Her gown, torn and soot-streaked, clings to her like memory. Beneath the dirt and blood, her mark glows faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the earth's heartbeat. Lucien walks beside her, tall, scarred, silent. His gaze is steady but shadowed, a man who has seen the world burn twice, and still chooses to walk through its ashes with her. The weight of centuries sits in his eyes, but there's something else there too, a quiet defiance, a promise that he will not let the old chains rebuild themselves again. They reach the broken gates of the imperial city. The symbols of the old reign still cling to the stone, cracked but not erased. Lyra pauses there. She presses her hand against the surface, feeling the cold grit of stone beneath her fingertips. The fire under her skin hums, not in rage this time, but in remembrance. This was where they crowned kings, she murmurs. Her voice trembles, soft but strong. And where they buried those who defied them. Lucien steps closer, his voice low, almost tender. Then let this be where they learn. Power is no longer their right. It's the price they pay for what they destroyed. The wind stirs between them, carrying whispers of the wolves that remain, scattered, lost, yet still breathing, still waiting. They move beyond the gates, their silhouettes stretching long across the path. Behind them, the city stands broken but not dead. The embers in the ruins flicker like a heartbeat refusing to fade. Somewhere deep beneath, something shifts, a vibration too subtle to notice, too ancient to name. The camera would linger there, if this were a story told in film, just a slow drift through the wreckage of the empire. The marble, the chains, the altar where Lyra once begged for mercy. The ash settling over statues of moonstone wolves. And beneath it all, a sound. Faint. Unearthly. Breathing. Far below the city, in the hidden catacombs where the moon goddess's priests once sealed away forbidden power, the earth begins to crack. Dust trickles down from the ceiling, disturbed by a pulse like the beat of a drum buried deep in the world's bones. A voice murmurs through the darkness, ancient and cold. Not human. Not divine. She is not the only one with the mark. The air thickens. From the fissure spreading through the stone floor, a faint light begins to rise, silver, pure, alive. It coils and dances like smoke, like breath, like a secret being exhaled into the world after centuries of silence. In the middle of that light, a shape forms, small at first, fragile, like a child's outline against the glow. Then the light sharpens, and a pair of eyes open. Silver eyes. Reflecting the same flame that once burned through Lyra's veins. The child lies still for a moment, surrounded by the remnants of ancient sigils carved into the ground. They pulse once, twice, then fade, their purpose fulfilled. The child inhales sharply, the first breath of something both old and new. Above, the earth trembles. The sky darkens for a heartbeat, as though the world itself feels the stirring below. Lyra looks back instinctively, her pulse quickening. Her mark flares, a warning, or a call. Lucien notices. His gaze sharpens. What is it? She hesitates, staring at the horizon. The light of dawn flickers for a moment, dimming. The wind shifts, colder now, brushing her skin like a whisper from the grave. Something woke, she says quietly. Something that was never meant to. The ground beneath them gives a low groan, not an earthquake, not yet, but a reminder. A heartbeat echoing from deep below. Lucien studies her, his jaw tightening. The prophecy was never about one flame, was it? She turns toward him, her eyes wide, haunted. No. It was about what comes after the first fire dies. The wind howls through the ruins, scattering ashes like snow. The wolves in the distance raise their heads, uneasy. Their howls ripple through the air, low, uncertain, questioning. Beneath the city, the silver-eyed child sits up. The mark on their small wrist burns faintly, identical to Lyra's, identical to Lucien's. They blink slowly, tilting their head as if listening to voices only they can hear. A single tear rolls down their cheek, glowing like molten moonlight, and falls onto the stone floor. The moment it hits, the fissures expand, spreading outward like veins of light. The child whispers, voice soft, echoing in the dark. Mother of flame, the world forgot you. But I remember. Then silence. A deep, breathless silence that feels like the pause before a storm breaks. Above, Lyra grips Lucien's hand. Her heart pounds, not from fear, but from recognition. She doesn't know how she knows, only that she does. Something below is bound to her. Something waiting. The dawn brightens again, trying to chase away the shadows, but for the first time, light looks uncertain. The air hums with unfinished magic. The ruins no longer feel dead, they feel alive, restless, whispering. Lucien meets her gaze. His voice drops to a near growl. We ended one empire. But it seems the gods aren't done playing with fire. Lyra doesn't answer. She just stares toward the horizon, her silver mark pulsing with each beat of her heart. She feels the pull, faint, distant, but real, like a thread connecting her to the sleeping fire beneath. For a fleeting second, she swears she can hear a child's laugh in the wind. Not innocent. Not cruel. Just knowing. She closes her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't over. The words drift through the morning air, carried across the broken empire, through forests, rivers, mountains, until they reach the edges of the world. Somewhere, in the deep wild where no wolf dares tread, another set of eyes opens. Golden this time. Watching. Waiting. The story doesn't end in peace. It ends in promise. In the pulse of something reborn, not just one flame, but many. The camera would fade to black there, the last image lingering on Lyra's hand entwined with Lucien's, both marked by the same silver fire, both glowing faintly in the growing light. And beneath the silence, beneath the ruin, beneath the illusion of calm, a single sound echoes again. A heartbeat. Then another. Then hundreds. The world is waking. And the voice that once whispered through Lyra's dreams now murmurs again, faint but clear, from somewhere far beyond the veil. The fire never dies, it only finds a new bearer. The sound fades into the wind, merging with the cry of distant wolves. The story pauses, not ends, suspended in the breath before the next storm, where prophecy waits and love still burns beneath the ashes. Because in Lycora, where gods once walked and wolves still dream, every ending is only the beginning of another reckoning. The last whisper drifts through the ruins, ghost-like, timeless, the echo of fate itself. She is not the only one with the mark. And then silence. A silence that hums like lightning before it strikes. A silence that promises, this isn't over.